No, can you
Great.
see my screen?
Yep.
Oh, good.
Go ahead.
And I hope you. I'm really sorry not to be there in person, but the meeting sounds wonderful. I'm going to talk to you about some work I've been doing in collaboration with Jakob, Christensen-Dalsgaard, and Michael Cherry on barking geckos. And if you'd asked me 10 years ago if lizards could localize sound, I'd have had to say no, because there is just no data. But we thought lizards should be able to localize sound because of some laser vibrometry studies that were started by Jakob. Most people in the audience, I imagine, don't do laser vibrometry, so I'll just briefly explain. You shine a laser at the eardrum, and that lets you measure its vibration. And here you can see an eardrum on the top left, and here laser vibrometry data on the right. There's an array of speakers around the lizard, and the bright colors indicate the strong vibration of the eardrum. And so when the laser and the speaker are both pointing in the same direction, the speaker vibrates beautifully. And then when you move the speaker to the front of the gecko or to the other side, the eardrum vibration is almost completely suppressed. Now, this is a lizard thing, not a general feature of animals with eardrums. Our eardrums don't really care where the sound is coming from as long as it's loud. But lizard eardrums are all directional. And this is because their ears are coupled. Here's a picture of a tokay gecko on the right, and this white arrow points to the eardrum. And if you take a section through a head of a preserved animal, you can see these big, thin eardrums on each side and the big open mouth. And so when a sound hits the one eardrum, it creates a pressure wave that propagates through the mouth and suppresses activity in the other eardrum. So geckos should be able to localize sound. But we had no proof of this. We picked geckos as a subject because they're vocal, right? They produce sounds to attract mates or defend territories. So should be directional. And also we'd done some recordings from the gecko's auditory nerve in the big soundproof chambers in Odense. And if you record from the gecko auditory nerve and measure its response to this array of speakers, I hope you can see my pointer, but you can imagine there are an array of speakers around the gecko. When the speaker is pointed directly at the eardrum, the auditory nerve fires like blazes. And when the speaker is on the other side, you get hardly any activity at all. This is a polar plot on the left, and on the right, here's the same data plotted on an XY plot. You can see this high firing rate when the speaker is pointed at the eardrum, and high Fisher information as the sound location changes. And so how to be able to show that these animals can localize sound. This is where Michael Cherry comes in. I was complaining bitterly to him about this problem, and he said, do I have the gecko for you? Michael is a trustee of the Kuruman River Reserve, which is just on the border of the Northern Cape and the Kalahari. And the Kuruman Reserve has large populations of these little geckos called common barking geckos, Tinopus garrulus. And Michael had directed a master's thesis from Daniel Polakar, who'd worked on barking geckos. For those of you who haven't seen them, they're nocturnal. The males dig burrows to it, and when females are attracted by their calls, they mate, and then the females will lay their eggs in the burrow. So barking geckos in the spring will start to advertise at dawn and at dusk, calling to attract mates. I'm going to play you their calls in just a few moments, but first I'll tell you what we did. In 2019, the three of us went to Kuruman, and we observed the gecko's behavior. Here's the array of cameras that we had. And then the director of the reserve, Walt Huber, caught us a few geckos that we maintained on termites. And we we took these geckos and lightly anesthetized them in order to record their auditory brainstem responses and hearing sensitivity. Here's a little gecko with a fine wire electrode sitting just above its ear. And then finally, we did laser vibrometry studies in the field. This is one of the rooms in the farmhouse. Lovely rooms, very solid concrete floors and very quiet. So we were able to do these measurements in the field. If you do laser vibrometry, you align the laser up with the eardrum. And when it's working, the whole mouth cavity fills with light, as you can see. So what did we find? Geckos, these barking geckos are so sensitive to sound. This is as good as any animal recorded. They have maximal sensitivity, about 3 kilohertz. This is the plot of threshold against sound frequency, and they can hear up to about 10 kilohertz. And then in the laser vibrometry in the field, we found, this is laser vibrometry from the side with ipsilateral to the laser in red, and then contralateral to the laser in the colder colors. And you can see this really strong directionality in the 2 to 4 kilohertz regions. So lizards should be able to localize sound. And then we were able to get some recordings from barking geckos in, sorry, very loud for my earphones. And let's turn it off. And but unfortunately, although that video was taken in very low light, because video cameras are more sensitive than our eyes, our best cameras did not work once we got to true dark, and our infrared sensitive cameras just didn't give us the resolution we needed. So we had to come back. We were going to come back in 2020, but we eventually went back to Kuruman in 2023. Here's our field site. This is Tim Clattenbrock's house. Here are 2 of us setting up a recording site. So here's the camera, which has, we removed all the infrared filters, and we had a large light catching lens, and then we surrounded the gecko burrow with a hemi array of Bluetooth controlled speakers. And so the main job for this was to find the geckos the night before, because their burrows are closed up during the day, and just as it's getting dark, they open the burrow up. So this yellow arrow points to a gecko burrow. Here's the camera pointing at the gecko, and here are the array of speakers 30 degrees apart. And if this place looks familiar to you, if you haven't been to Kuruman, you've seen it many, many times on nature videos. These are the famous meerkats that most people work on. And I'm going to show you now one of our normal videos. I'm not going to run it until I tell you what's going to happen. We are going to play a sound from a speaker that's to the lower left of the animal. I hope you can see my pointer, but if not, just imagine. And then the gecko is going to call, and then you'll hear other calls from neighboring territory holders that the gecko is going to ignore, and then we'll play another sound again. So let's hope it works. Yeah, gecko attends to the call. And then we're going to play one last call. The geckos are very attentive to these calls, which we played from. We'd recorded them in 2019, and they pretty well ignore the local territory holders. So what we did is we measured from these video frames the head turning behavior of the geckos, and here are our data. I've just given you examples in this slide. You can see a gecko turning its head to look at the speaker that's to its far right, and then a 60-degree turn, 30-degree speaker, 0, 30, 60. You get the picture. And let me show you all our data. These are all the data from our experiments, and you can see that the geckos were really quite accurate in this head-turning behavior. Probably the most variation was in the far left and far right, where the gecko has to turn quite a lot to look at the speaker. And our most problematic speaker location was 0 degrees because we made a decision to only measure the head turning behavior towards the speaker. And quite often the gecko was looking directly ahead. So we only got 24 recordings from the 0 speakers. But I think it's clear to all of you that geckos localize sound very well. These are field behavior. This is field behavior, so you can't do the psychophysical measurements, but for field behavior, these guys are good. And so barking geckos can localize sound. It's likely that all lizards have good directional hearing, given the structure of their ears. This is us in this last slide, looking for gecko burrows at night. Probably Michael, probably Jakob. And then finally, I'd like to thank you for your attention. I want to thank Walt Jober again, and particularly Marta Manser, who's the director of the reserve from Zurich, and then the Kuruman Fund, the Carlsberg Foundation, and the NIH for their support. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Really lovely talk. Thank you so much. Oh, it was a bit loud.
Oh, you're welcome. Yes, sorry.
Any questions from the auditorium or any online? No?
Yeah, I turned up the volume a lot just in case, because I really wanted you to.
Well, there's one question we have here in the auditorium.
Hello, thanks for your talk. I don't study hearing. I'm not that familiar with how this might compare to human ability to localize sound. Are geckos better at that than we are?
No, actually, we're really, really good. The two measured champions of the world so far, I mean, marine mammals are an exception. The two measured champions are barn owls and humans, both where you can do careful lab constraints psychophysics. And where barn owls, you're measuring either pupil dilation or head turning. Humans, you just ask them. And humans and barn owls can both differentiate between targets that are 2 degrees apart. So we can't do psychophysics in geckos. So we don't know if they're as good, but they've got a very small head. And so their localization task is perhaps a little bit harder than ours. But so the answer is, I'm sorry, I don't know. They're good, but I don't know if they're the world champions. And then I see Giacomo has his hand up too.
Yes.
Yeah.
Hi, Catherine. Thanks for the talk. Very nice. I have a question about the temporal, like if you observe any temporal patterns of the response from the gecko to your playbacks, and if the orientation also eventually plays a role in the response time.
I'm afraid I don't know. The responses were coincident with the onset of the call. So the call would start, as you saw in the video, and the gecko would whip its head around and occasionally charge the speaker. So I would say I never saw a sort of what I'd describe as lagging behavior. It was always a rapid orientation.
Okay,
but
but I mean,
of the orientation varied, yeah.
Sorry, I meant like, do they respond back? Do they call back? And if they do, is there a temporal coordination with the playback?
No, I haven't finished that part of the analysis, but I would say I don't think they altered the timing of their call. I mean, we're still discussing whether that occurs. The geckos in the field, if you're just looking at measuring territory holders, and Toby Hibbets in particular has done nice work on this, they don't tend to duet or overlap, which you'll see in some animals. You'll get overlapping as a sign of aggression. So I don't know. I don't know, but I don't think so.
Okay, thank you very much.
Oh, welcome.
Lovely. Thank you, Catherine.
You're welcome. Bye. And I'll be online.